I have a need to bend some sheet metal for an upcoming project. Well, not as much bend it, but form a curve into some 34-inch wide 16 gauge sheet metal. And I recently watched a video by the Metalist where he built this sheet metal roller, so I thought I'd give it a try. And I bought his plans, and I followed him fairly closely using different tools than he did, but for the most part, it's pretty similar. So pretty happy with how it came out. So here's a video on how I got there. By the way, this took me about 3 months to build, and with an hour here and an hour there. So if it seems a little disjointed at times, that's because it is. So let's go. It's a pretty simple device. You got a metal frame here. You've got 3 pipes with rods that come through the middle of them and they're welded together. And then they spin in these roller bearings or pillow box bearings, I think they call them. And then they have an adjustment device to move the center one up and down. And then on the other end, you have a crank for one of them and a chain that drives the 2 lower rollers. So the upper roller is just passive and the bottom 2 will actually turn with the crank. So you roll your steel through there and you keep adjusting the middle roller down as you go, and it makes a tighter and tighter arc in the middle as you do it. So that's the plan. Let's start cutting some metal. These are the bottom two rollers for this sheet metal roller. These will be the two that have the chain drive around them. And these have, the way you make these is you've got these parts that you've seen me make. These are just big fat washers that I put together on the lathe. You've got 3/4 inch rod, solid rod that goes all the way through. And then this is a 2-inch pipe, I think. And so these little washers go on here and they slide in, and then you weld them to the rod and to the pipe. And then you end up with a solid roller. Now for the top one, you have to be able to remove the bar and tip the roller up so that you can get your metal off of it. So if you can envision using a slip roller like this, let me go back to the drawing. The metal is in between here, and as it curves, it wraps around this red top roller, and it curves on top of the bottom two rollers. And if you keep going all the way, you'd end up with a hoop or a circle, right? A full circle. And then once you have the two ends together, you can't get them off over this pipe. So he's designed this so that you can pull this top rod out of the middle pipe and then tip it up and slide the metal off the pipe. But anyway, that's what I'm working on right at the moment. So I've got my pipe here, and this one's going to have 3 of these washers on it, on the bar. It'll have one down here that's fixed to the pipe, but not the rod, so the rod can slide through it. And then down here, it's going to have one that's fixed to the rod and not the pipe, so that the washer actually slips in and out. And then another one that's welded. I'm going to drill some holes here and weld another one of these washers right in it's about 4 inches back on the pipe. And I think you'll see how it works when you get it together. But it allows you to be able to slide this rod in and out. And so you can pull it out, and then you can tip the whole bar up and slide your workpiece off, and then put it back down and slide the rod back out into the bearing. And rotate again. Okay, so here I've got my holes in the pipe, weld through that. This is the washer that will be welded in there. So that'll be inside the pipe and get welded through those holes to hold it in place. And this rod will be able to, it's a pretty loose fit, so it'll be easily able to slide through. So now I just got to get the washer in there to the right position inside the pipe. And then I'm going to put the rod in through it and put the other 2 washers in the end to make sure it's held in the right alignment, so that I'll be able to move the pipe through it in line with the pipe. Beautiful. Now, can I still move it? Oh yeah, that's money. Okay, now those are kind of bubbled up proud, but I will grind those down, and that washer is fixed in there. Okay, this is where we just welded that washer in. Now got to weld this washer to the rod, but not to the pipe, so that it will slide with the rod inside of the pipe, and it will slide back and hit that washer when it's fully retracted, and that's far enough to bring this rod all the way inside the pipe so that the pipe can move up out of the bearing. Okay, now I gotta weld that to the pipe and not the rod. And in fact, if it does weld to the rod, I'm kind of screwed, because then I won't be able to retract this pipe in and out, the rod in and out. So I've sprayed the rod with some anti-spatter spray, and it's really hard to get in there with my gun. Actually, you know what? I can retract that rod all the way. That's what I should do. Please hold. Okay, better. Got the rod in there, but retract it all the way back as far as I dare to. I want to keep it in there because I need to make sure the washer is in proper alignment with the rod. But hopefully that won't get stuck. Gives me more room, more better room to weld. Okay. I can grind it a little, but I think that'll hold it. Let's see. Does the rod still come through? Nope. Oh, yeah. Beautiful. The 3 rollers are done. All right, so the next step is going to be trying to get some of these parts ready for the frame. You can see the frame is really these plates on the ends, a bottom of some variety, and the plates on the other end, some of these other brackets and things as well. So I'm going to start with a bigger version here. Start with this end plate that these bearings for the lower 2 rollers go onto. I've already cut those, and I've roughed out the holes to drill for the bearing to go onto. So you need 2 holes here that are going to be threaded 3/8 to hold the bearing on, and then a 3rd hole has to be a through hole larger than this, because this is 3/4, the shaft is 3/4. I want it to pass through this plate and into the bearing without contact. So I'm going to end up drilling this one, this hole 7/8. I'd probably go bigger, but that's the biggest drill I have without going to a hole saw. And then these guys will get a 332 thousandths drill, which is a Q drill for threading 3/8/16. And since I have 4 of them to do, and this is all on the center axis, or centered on the plate, I should say, I can just stack, I think I can just stack all 4 of them together and pop drills through all of them. So I'm going to do that on the mill. Regular hand tapping now, one at a time, one hole at a time. All right, easy enough. Okay, 6 more to do. You got those threaded and chamfered the holes all nice, and they're in good shape. And then this is what this will look like when assembled. So you got the bearing bolted in there. It's just loose right now, but pretty good. All right, now I'm going to make this middle piece that this middle bearing bolts to, and then this is adjustable and slides up and down, and it slides between the rails. It's a 3-part piece, so there's a piece on the inside, piece on the outside, and then a narrower piece in the middle, leaving a channel that slides up and down on these edge pieces. So it's kind of this setup here. That would be the inside, for example. And then this would be sandwiched on top of it. And then the bearing would bolt right through the whole thing. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to get these centered up and squared up. And then I'm going to tack weld the ends just to hold them in alignment. And then I'll drill the 3 holes, the 2 for tapping and the big through hole, just like I did on the end pieces. And then I'll separate them, enlarge the 2 holes here so that they're clearance holes, and then tap the thread on the back piece. So the bolt will go straight through here and bolt into or thread into the back piece. Yeah, I've got those 3 pieces pretty well squared up. Measured the gap or the distance into the middle pieces, 1/4 inch on both sides. Pretty well square as I can do. So now I'm going to pop a couple tack welds on that. Just temporary. These will get ground off afterwards, but just to hold it for drilling. All right, got those drilled out in formation. Now I just got to grind these tack welds off, separate the plates. I will tap the bottom plate for these 2 holes, and clearance the other 2 a little bit bigger here so the bolt slides through, and this hole's all set. So we're just machined these edges a little bit just to take the scale off and narrow them up a little so that they'll slide well. Nice. All right, so there's all the parts and pieces. I was just looking back, and I started this project 2 months ago, and it's taken me 2 months to gather the materials and fabricate up these parts and pieces. You know, when I say 2 months, that's like half an hour here, an hour there, a couple hours here and there at night after work usually, or after everybody goes to bed or whatever. So anyway, it's, you know, probably if I went straight through, I could have done it in, you know, a couple of days. But there's a fair amount of, yeah, probably not even a couple of days. Yeah, maybe for me. There's a fair amount of work here, though. You know, figuring out all the dimensions. I mean, tons of threaded holes. These are all threaded. Getting these dimensions all to line up right. Getting these holes all to fit the bearings. So that's a hole. That's a plate where the bearing bolts into the smaller holes and the rod passes through the larger hole. Had to source these gears and chain. First chain I ordered with the gears didn't fit, had to redo that. Ordered these bearings, which by the way are kind of crap. They don't, they're not self-aligning as they're supposed to be, and they're not in alignment. So, you know, a lot of fabrication. I mean, I guess it's not a lot, but it's a lot for a hobby guy like me. You know, shaving down these, milling down the edges of these. I did, the only thing I've really put together yet are these rollers. So they are fully put together. This one moves. And that's it. So next step is to start welding it together. There's actually not that much welding to do. Most of it gets bolted together. Just gotta weld the end plates and some of these gussets, and weld these guys on the ends of this angle iron that does the support across the bottom of the whole unit. So anyway, not too much, but I guess the very next step is to grind all this stuff down and clean it up where I need to weld, and hopefully that won't take too long. We'll start tacking it together. welded up. Bulk of the welding done. It's really only tacked, but I don't think it needs much more than that. I hope, because I don't want to weld fully under these bolts. I wouldn't be able to turn them very well. I might be able to sneak a little weld under there, I guess, but not much. Can't weld this piece because it's got to go up and down. Could weld on the edges. I had to grind away some of this weld. I put one tack here between the sliding piece and this flange or mounting plate, whatever you want to call it. But I don't have any more room there. This one actually got in the way and I had to weld it away. Or not weld it away, grind it away with the die grinder, but I got it in. Anyway, so that seems pretty solid. And now we're left with this end and gonna do the same thing over here. Now that things are roughly put together for the frame, we need to move on to making, I think this is probably the last part that I have to put together, which is this crank handle right here. So I'm going to build some kind of a handle that hooks onto the roller, one of the lower rollers, and we'll build it in 3 parts, something similar to what he's designed here. So there's kind of a ring or a collar that will fit onto the shaft in one of the lower rollers. There's a flat bar that comes across to make the arm of the handle, and then try to work up some kind of fancy handle on the lathe. And then I'm gonna probably find a way to weld these two together and then bolt this handle on with a shoulder bolt so that it spins in your hand, like a rolling handle. So let's get to work on the lathe. Something like this and turn it down into a handle, have a bolt through it with a shoulder so that this spins freely in your hand as you crank the thing. Okay, so made a little tapered handle there. I'll part that off, sand it up a little bit, round off the handle all put together. Yeah, full rotating ergonomic handle. Welded the shaft, I guess, to the cup that goes on the end of the roller. So set screw, put a little divot there for a set screw. Probably should have put a key in this, but it seems unnecessary. And that gets tightened down. And that's the roller once we get it set up. Cool. Last step, time for paint. Or at least primer tonight. So this is the setup. All my little parts and pieces hanging here. Big guys hanging up here. Taped off some of these where I machined in the slides here. but mostly it's just all gonna get paint. I am not painting the rollers or any of the hardware, but all the main pieces of metal will be painted. So time to get to painted up, ready to put together for final assembly. And that is this machine put together. All right, test drive here with some pretty flimsy stuff. Actually, I mean, you know, I could bend this by hand, so, but the idea is to be able to make a neater, you know, smooth round and a nice arc. So let's see how this works. Nothing yet. Down there. I think this is 22 gauge metal, so it's pretty thin. This is pretty easy. We can try something here. Look at that. That's not bad, but it could have, it's a really shitty piece of metal, and I didn't pay any attention to it. I realized that I didn't build on some guards that he had in his design. That might have helped keep that straight. Let's try something a little bigger. This is, again, just a shitty scrap. And I had this bent this way. Here, these corner tabs were bent flat, so I just hammered those back flat this way, see if we can roll it. I have some real stuff to try with it next, so see how it works. And it'll be 16 gauge, so quite a bit thicker. But that's it for this demo. Just one more shout out as I wrap this video up. Just a reminder, I did buy this plan from the Metalist YouTube channel. I forget the guy's name. Dirk Arndt, I believe his name is. He sells these plans and other plans for things he builds on Wayfair, I think it is. So anyway, it came out pretty good. I thought he did a pretty good job, and his videos are really awesome. I'll see if I can link to his work, but he's a true professional. So anyway, thanks for watching.